She screamed at my dying son, right in his face. During his Make-A-Wish trip, the one fragile chance we had for pure joy in a life consumed by hospitals and fear. She looked at my little boy, my brave Leo fighting for every breath, and unleashed pure, unadulterated venom. You think you know entitled Karens? You have no idea. But what this monster didn't grasp, blinded by her own selfish rage, was that her cruelty wouldn't just be seen, it would go viral. The consequences? They weren't just bad, they were catastrophic. Fired. Arrested. Publicly shamed in a way that would obliterate her life. If you want to hear how the universe delivered a spectacular karmic beatdown on perhaps the worst Karen ever recorded, stay right there. This story is unbelievable, infuriating, and ultimately deeply satisfying. My name is Sarah, and more than anything else in this world, I'm Leo's mom. My sweet, impossibly brave Leo. For 3 long years, our universe had shrunk, contained within the walls of hospitals, the rhythm of treatments, and the constant, gut-wrenching seesaw of hope and dread that defines life with a child battling a life-threatening illness. Leo was only 6, yet he carried an invisible weight, facing needles and scans and scary medical terms with a quiet courage that left me breathless. He loved drawing superheroes with vibrant capes, the specific shade of ocean blue, and whispering secrets to his stuffed bear. These simple things became anchors in our storm-tossed world. His diagnosis had fractured our ordinary life into a million pieces. Lazy Saturday mornings, messy park playdates, the simple normalcy we'd taken for granted, all replaced. Our new normal was the smell of antiseptic, the hushed tones of doctors, the endless nights spent researching conditions I couldn't even pronounce. I'd left my career as a graphic designer behind without a second thought, becoming his 24/7 nurse, advocate, and cheerleader. My husband, Mark, worked relentlessly, the stress carving new lines onto his face, mirroring the constant ache in my own heart. Our world was small, intense, and revolved entirely around Leo's fight. And then, like a sudden, unexpected sunbeam through thick clouds, came Make-A-Wish. When the kind volunteers asked Leo for his one, true, magical wish, his eyes, often clouded with pain or exhaustion, sparked with an almost forgotten light. The magical kingdom. He'd whispered, his voice filled with awe. He wanted the castle, the characters, the dazzling parades he'd only seen in fleeting commercials, snippets of pure, unadulterated childhood he yearned for. He just wanted a taste of normal magic. A perfect memory. Before, well, we fought hard not to dwell on the before. Planning that trip became my singular focus, my obsession. It was more than just a vacation. It felt sacred, a pilgrimage to create one flawless, golden memory we could hold onto, a jewel to keep safe no matter what the future held. Leo helped, meticulously planning which rides were must-dos and which characters needed a hug. Seeing that flicker of ordinary childhood excitement in him was like medicine for my soul. The foundation was incredible, handling flights, arranging accessible rooms at a resort nestled right beside the park, providing special passes to help us navigate the physical challenges, the heat, the queues, that could be genuinely dangerous for Leo. Everything was meticulously planned to minimize stress, maximize joy. We packed his essential medications alongside his favorite superhero PJs, hope tangled tightly with the ever-present anxieties. As we boarded that plane, his small, warm hand tucked into mine, I sent a silent plea into the universe. Please, let this be perfect. Let him have this untarnished joy. He deserves the magic. We needed it so badly. We just had no idea a different kind of monster, fueled by pure entitlement, was waiting for us there too. The theme park resort was, initially, a sensory explosion of manufactured joy. Cheerful music piped through hidden speakers, bright storybook architecture gleamed under the sun, and staff offered practiced, wide smiles. We were guided to a separate, quieter check-in area for Make-A-Wish families, a thoughtful buffer against the usual overwhelming bustle. Leo, nestled in his superhero sticker-adorned wheelchair, small oxygen cannula tucked under his nose, gazed around with wide, absorbing eyes. He looked so fragile, yet his spirit felt practically buoyant. We were gathering our room keys and special park passes when she made her entrance. She didn't walk into the serene reception space. She detonated. Loudly barking into her phone, her voice had the sharp, grating quality of nails on a chalkboard. She was an almost perfect caricature. The severe, angled blonde bob, the expensive athleisure where that screamed, "I don't exercise," the enormous designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, the ostentatious logo bag swinging aggressively. Her nails were long, flawless, painted a vivid coral, ideal for accusatory pointing. Ignoring a family waiting patiently, she marched directly to the desk. "Excuse me," she snapped, cutting them off mid-sentence. "My suite. Pool view. It better be ready. And I need extra towels. Now." "The service here needs to justify the cost," she demanded. Every word dripped with impatience and an assumption of absolute priority. The receptionist, a saint of calm professionalism, replied smoothly that "Certainly, ma'am, if you'll just give me one moment while I finish with this family." Karen, because what else could she be, executed a dramatic eye roll that could have generated wind power. Her gaze swept across the room, pausing for a fraction of a second on Leo in his chair, registering his presence, then dismissing him as irrelevant background clutter. She began tapping those immaculate nails on the polished countertop, emitting loud, theatrical sighs. We scurried through the rest of our check-in, eager to escape the toxic cloud of negativity she radiated. As we turned to leave, the Make-A-Wish liaison accompanying us was quietly explaining the assistance pass, how it allowed entry via alternate routes to avoid prolonged exposure to heat and crowds, crucial for Leo's fragile health. Karen's head whipped around, her hearing apparently laser-focused on any perceived special treatment. "Special pass?" she echoed, her voice sharp with suspicion. "What's that?" she demanded to know. "Do all guests get one, or is it just for, well, some people?" Her eyes narrowed, targeting Leo again, lingering this time on the thin tube delivering his oxygen. The liaison maintained her professional smile, though it seemed tighter now. "It's part of our accessibility program, ma'am," she explained, "for guests with specific medical requirements, ensuring they can enjoy their visit safely." A small, ugly scoff escaped Karen's lips. "Right," she sneered. "Requirements. How very convenient." She turned back towards the desk, lowering her voice slightly, but ensuring we could still hear her judgment. "Probably just working the system for perks. Some people have no shame," she muttered. My breath caught in my throat. A hot flush crept up my neck. Mark's hand found my shoulder, a silent warning. "Look at him." I wanted to scream. "Look at my beautiful, struggling boy. Does this look like a game to you?" The fury burned, but I swallowed it down hard. Leo was right there. He didn't need this ugliness poisoning his magical trip before it even truly began. We hurried away, me pushing Leo's chair, Mark handling the bags, the cheerful resort music suddenly sounding tinny and false. My hands were unsteady. That woman, her instant judgment, her casual cruelty, it felt like a physical blow. I tried to shake it off, forcing myself to focus on Leo's excited babble about finally seeing the giant castle. But a cold knot of dread had tightened in my stomach. This wasn't over. I had a sickening premonition that we hadn't seen the last of Karen, and she was going to make our lives miserable. The first day inside the park itself was mostly wonderful, a blur of bright colors, enchanting music, and Leo's awestruck expressions. Seeing his face as he laid eyes on the towering fairy tale castle, witnessing his pure joy meeting characters he'd only seen on screen, these moments were diamonds, fiercely clutched. We used the assistance pass judiciously, primarily for the mega-popular attractions with sprawling outdoor queues that would have been physically impossible for him. The park staff, for the most part, were incredibly compassionate and discreet, guiding us through less crowded paths or letting us wait in shaded, quiet spots. It made the impossible possible, allowing Leo glimpses of normalcy he so rarely experienced. But Karen, like a bad penny, kept turning up. We spotted her later that day near the spinning teacups ride, embroiled in a loud argument with a young ride attendant. Apparently, the regular line was beneath her dignity. "I pay a premium to be here," she declared, gesturing expansively, "not to stand around in the heat with, well, everyone." Her gaze swept the queue, then snagged on us as we were being quietly directed towards the accessible boarding area. Recognition flared in her eyes, instantly followed by an expression of profound distaste. She leaned towards her companion and muttered something, just loud enough for the wind to carry fragments to my ears. Unbelievable. Special favors. Probably faking it. Her hateful words, faking it, hung in the air. My blood turned to ice water. Faking it? Did she truly believe this was some elaborate performance? The oxygen, the wheelchair, the exhaustion etched onto his small face, even amidst the excitement? The sheer, stunning callousness of it made bile rise in my throat. Mark gently steered me away before the dam of my restraint could break. "Don't give her the satisfaction, Sarah," he murmured, his jaw tight. "She's nobody. This is about Leo." He was right. Leo was pointing, oblivious for the moment, captivated by the whirling, brightly colored teacups. This trip was for him, about him. But the encounters were accumulating, like sharp little stones dropped into my shoes, making every step heavier. The following morning found us at a character breakfast buffet, controlled chaos, but Leo lived for the chance to hug a giant mouse. We chose a table slightly out of the way, giving us room for the wheelchair. And who should be holding court a few tables over, complaining about the allegedly subpar quality of the bacon? Karen, naturally. She was with a man who looked monumentally bored by her monologue. When Goofy ambled towards our table, doing his clumsy, endearing shtick, Leo giggled with pure, unadulterated delight. Goofy knelt beside his chair, posed for photos, gave him a gentle high five. It was a pocket of perfect, innocent joy, until Karen's voice sliced through the cheerful din. "Well, look at that," she drawled to her captive audience of one, her voice pitched to carry across the room. "More special treatment. Must be nice getting all this attention just for sitting down. Probably gets them to the front of every line, too." This time, Leo heard her. His bright smile faltered, replaced by a shadow of confusion and hurt. He looked down at his hands in his lap, suddenly small and self-conscious. My heart didn't just break. It splintered. That was it. My chair screeched as I pushed back abruptly. Mark's hand shot out, gripping my arm. "Sarah, don't. She can't talk about him like that," I whispered fiercely, my voice thick with rage and unshed tears. But Karen simply offered a tiny, smug smirk in our direction, then deliberately turned back to her breakfast, dismissing us as thoroughly as if we'd ceased to exist. She knew we'd heard. The cruelty was the point. I knelt beside Leo, pasting a bright, brittle smile onto my face. "Don't you mind silly grown-ups, sweetie," I told him softly. "Goofy thinks you're awesome. Wasn't that the best hug?" I poured all my energy into restoring the magic, but her casual poison had already seeped in. He just nodded, his eyes losing some of their earlier sparkle. Throughout that second day, her presence felt like a persistent, low-grade infection. A contemptuous glare as we used an elevator. A loud sigh and muttered comment about some people taking up too much space on a pathway. We saw her berating a vendor about the price of bottled water. She seemed to navigate the park fueled by a perpetual sense of grievance, scanning constantly for slights and opportunities to assert her perceived dominance. We found ourselves actively trying to anticipate her movements, altering our carefully planned route, nervously scanning crowds, trying to stay out of her orbit. It was profoundly exhausting, layering a corrosive stress onto the already immense burden of managing Leo's health.
Why?
I kept asking myself, why focus such negativity on a child, on my child? My protective instincts were a roaring fire, but I felt trapped. A public confrontation would terrify Leo and likely achieve nothing with a woman so entrenched in her own righteousness. But Karen wasn't content with just being a background menace. On day 3, she escalated from passive-aggressive sniping to active obstruction. We'd found a spot in a designated accessible viewing area for the big afternoon parade, slightly raised, roped off, offering a clear view for wheelchairs. A few other families were settled nearby, all managing various challenges. Karen marched straight up, ducked under the rope barrier, and planted herself directly in front of Leo's wheelchair, completely blocking his line of sight. The smell of her expensive perfume was suddenly cloying, invasive. A young female attendant hurried over. "Excuse me, ma'am," she began. "I'm sorry, but this area is reserved for guests who need accessible viewing." Karen waved a dismissive, coral-tipped hand without looking back. "Well, I need it," she declared. "The sun's too strong over there." She still hadn't acknowledged Leo's presence, inches behind her. "Ma'am, I understand." The attendant tried again, "but there are other shaded areas available. This particular space is specifically designated for—" "Are you actually telling me I cannot stand here?" Karen's voice climbed, sharp and indignant, immediately drawing stares. The cheerful parade music seemed to dim around us. "I paid a fortune to be in this park. I have rights." "Everyone has the right to enjoy the parade, ma'am," the attendant replied, admirably keeping her cool. "But this area does have specific access requirements." People were murmuring now, their attention shifting from the pre-parade anticipation to the unfolding drama. My face felt hot, embarrassment warring with fury. "Excuse me," I managed, my voice tight and trembling. "My son.
He can't see."
Karen finally pivoted, looking down her nose first at me, then with open disdain at Leo. A sneer twisted her features. "Maybe if you didn't clutter up the park with all this paraphernalia," she spat, gesturing vaguely towards the wheelchair, the small oxygen tank, then normal people could actually enjoy things. The sheer, breathtaking cruelty of the remark sucked the air from my lungs. Before I could formulate a response that wasn't just pure rage, Mark stepped between Karen and Leo, a solid, protective wall. His voice was low, quiet, but vibrating with controlled anger.
"You need to move," he said. "Right now."
Something in his tone, perhaps, finally registered. Karen took a small step back, her eyes flashing. She glared at Mark, then at the attendant, then at the growing audience of disapproving onlookers. With a final, theatrical huff that ruffled her perfect bob, she spat out her parting shot. "This place is a joke." Pandering to the freeloaders, she spun on her heel and stormed off, muttering darkly about filing a formal complaint. The attendant was mortified, apologizing over and over. Other families offered quiet words of support, sympathetic glances. But the confrontation left me shaking, adrenaline warring with despair. She'd gone from snide remarks to direct, aggressive blocking. And her threat to complain, that lodged a shard of ice in my gut. What fabrications would she spin? What trouble could her malice cause? This wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was targeted harassment. The magic of the trip felt irrevocably tainted, replaced by a heavy, ominous sense of foreboding. Something worse was brewing. I could taste it in the air, metallic and bitter, like an approaching storm. The storm broke later that same afternoon. A polite but firm message appeared on our resort room phone. "Please contact guest relations at your earliest convenience." My stomach clenched into a tight, painful knot.
"Karen."
She'd done it. Mark and I exchanged grim, knowing looks. We had to deal with this immediately. We arranged for a wonderful Make-A-Wish volunteer, bless her soul, to stay with Leo while he rested, promising him we'd be back soon. The guest relations office felt unnaturally calm, the air conditioning a cold contrast to the heat simmering under my skin. We were shown into a small, private office. A manager named Diane, whose kind eyes held a hint of weariness, greeted us gravely. "Mr. and Mrs. Evans," she began, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We received a guest complaint earlier today involving your family, and I need to discuss the details with you." My pulse hammered against my ribs. "A complaint? What about?" I asked, my voice thin. Diane consulted a file. "A guest, a Ms. Karen Henderson," she paused, making eye contact, "lodged a formal complaint alleging misuse of the park's accessibility services." My breath hitched. "She claimed your son did not appear sufficiently ill to warrant the assistance pass." My God. She also stated that your family was disruptive, demanded preferential treatment, and caused significant distress to other guests, including herself. I shot to my feet. That is outrageous. A complete lie. She has been harassing us since the moment we arrived. She's been verbally abusive. She physically blocked my son's view. She's made disgusting comments. Indignation choked me. Mark calmly took over, recounting each incident: the check-in sneer, the breakfast insult, the parade confrontation. Diane listened intently, making occasional notes. "Ms. Henderson," she continued, her tone carefully neutral, "also alleged that during the parade incident, you became verbally aggressive towards her after she simply inquired about finding a different viewing spot." Mark let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Inquired?" She deliberately stood in front of my son's wheelchair and refused to move. Diane held up a placating hand. "I understand. Please let me continue." Ms. Henderson was extremely adamant. She demanded your assistance pass be immediately revoked. She also, Diane hesitated, looking distinctly uncomfortable, made sure to mention she is a partner at a prominent law firm in her home city, and strongly implied potential legal repercussions for the park if we did not appropriately address her concerns about your family. Legal action? Against us? For using a service designed exactly for children like Leo? This woman wasn't just entitled, she was delusional and vindictive. But then, Diane's expression shifted. The professional mask slipped, revealing a glint of steel beneath. "However," she said, leaning forward slightly, "we investigate all serious complaints thoroughly. This includes reviewing cast member reports and, where available, security footage." Ms. Henderson's version of the parade incident, for instance, contained significant inconsistencies compared to the detailed report from our cast member present. It also contradicted statements voluntarily provided by several other guests who witnessed the exchange and approached staff afterwards. A wave of immense relief washed over me, so strong my knees felt weak. "So you know she lied?" Let's say her narrative did not align with the corroborated evidence. Diane chose her words carefully. Furthermore, during her lengthy complaint, Ms. Henderson made some statements that raised flags. She insisted she was a platinum-level annual pass holder, affording her certain privileges. Our system shows she purchased a standard 5-day ticket online just last week. A petty, easily verifiable lie.
Why?
To bolster her perceived status? To intimidate? Diane pressed on. She also made several unfortunate remarks about the park needing stricter screening for accessibility services to prevent abuse by those who aren't genuinely disabled, specifically questioning conditions that aren't immediately visible. Those comments were duly noted.
Wow.
Her prejudice was as blatant as her entitlement. She'd handed them ammunition against herself. "But here's the crucial part," Diane said, her voice softening with genuine empathy. "In order to verify the timeline of events Ms. Henderson described in her complaint, the check-in area, near the teacups, the restaurant, we reviewed security camera footage from those locations and times. While doing so, The system captured multiple instances of Ms. Henderson approaching your family unprompted. It captured her speaking towards you as you passed. Frankly, the visual evidence strongly supports your account of events and indicates a clear pattern of concerning behavior directed specifically towards you by Ms. Henderson. Mark and I stared at each other, stunned into silence. The footage. Karen, in her arrogant certainty, had never considered her own actions were being recorded. Diane sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. Normally, we strive for quiet resolution. But given the severity and baseless nature of Ms. Henderson's accusations against a Make-A-Wish family, her misleading statements to us, her documented pattern of behavior, and her veiled threats, this situation requires a more direct intervention. We will be addressing this directly with Ms. Henderson. I want to assure you unequivocally, your assistance pass is valid. You have done nothing wrong. And I am profoundly sorry that this individual's conduct has cast such a shadow over your son's special wish. It felt like surfacing after being held underwater. Management believed us. They saw Karen's toxicity. But the twist wasn't just that her complaint was dismissed. It was the proof. The undeniable footage. Her lies caught red-handed. She hadn't just been obnoxious. She'd actively tried to inflict harm, to strip away the support Leo needed, using deceit as a weapon. The malice ran deeper, colder than I'd imagined. We thanked Diane, feeling a fragile sense of vindication, but the relief was tinged with apprehension. A woman like Karen, caught in her lies, confronted with evidence she wouldn't react well. This wasn't over. An explosion felt inevitable. We left guest relations bracing ourselves, dreading the final confrontation we knew was coming. We just couldn't have predicted how public, how ugly, and how utterly devastating for her it would ultimately be. Our final day dawned bright and sunny, a cruel mockery of the tension simmering just below the surface. We were determined, fiercely determined, to salvage the remaining hours for Leo, to push Karen and her toxicity out of our minds. The grand finale was the Main Street Electrical Parade that evening, a river of twinkling lights and beloved characters. We found a spot along the parade route early, wanting to secure a good view. Leo, bundled in a soft blanket in his chair, oxygen cannula in place, watched the crowd build with wide, expectant eyes. He was visibly tired, paler than the day before, but the anticipation buzzed around him. This was it. The big magical moment. The streetlights dimmed, the synthesized music swelled, and the first dazzling floats began their slow, glittering procession. Pure, unadulterated magic seemed to sparkle in the air. Leo gasped, his small hand squeezing mine tightly, completely mesmerized. And then, through the shifting crowd, I saw her.
Karen.
A thundercloud in human form, pushing aggressively through the throng, her face a mask of incandescent rage. Her eyes scanned the spectators like a predator seeking prey. And then they locked onto us. A cold shock went through me. Not now. Oh, please God, not now. Not here. She shoved her way towards our small patch of pavement, ignoring the protests of people she elbowed aside. She stopped inches away, breathing heavily, radiating fury. She wasn't looking at me, or Mark this time. Her eyes, narrowed into venomous slits, were fixed, with terrifying intensity, on Leo. You, she spat, her voice low and trembling with contained rage. You people. I know what you told them. Mark instantly moved, placing himself as a shield between Karen and Leo's chair. Ma'am, I'm asking you politely. Leave us alone. We are watching the parade. Leave you alone? Her voice suddenly erupted, shrieking, cutting through the cheerful parade music like a siren. Heads snapped around. The subtle glow of phone screens began to angle towards the commotion. You tried to ruin me. You lied to guest relations. They confronted me. Because of you. We told them the truth, I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to be heard over the rising din. You were harassing a sick child. They saw the proof. Karen threw her head back and let out a high-pitched, cackling laugh that wasn't remotely humorous. It was chilling. Proof? There's no proof. You're frauds. This whole sob story is a performance. She stabbed a finger, that perfectly manicured coral nail trembling, directly at Leo. He flinched violently, shrinking back into his chair, his eyes huge with terror. He's not even that sick. She screamed, her voice now a full-blown hysterical screech that silenced the nearby crowd. It's all for show. For sympathy. For freebies and cutting lines while decent people have to wait. You probably taught him how to fake it. It's disgusting. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. People stared, frozen in disbelief and horror. The air crackled, thick with outrage. He needs oxygen. Karen shrieked, gesturing wildly at the cannula beneath Leo's nose. So what? Big deal. Maybe it's just asthma. My sister's kid has asthma. He doesn't get the entire park bending over backwards. This is exploitation. You people make me physically ill. Tears began streaming down Leo's pale cheeks. He buried his face against my side, his small body trembling. Mommy, he sobbed, his voice muffled. Make the lady stop. That sound. My son's terrified sob. It shattered the last dam of my control. Get away from him. I screamed, raw, animal fury ripping through me. How dare you speak to my child like that? He is fighting for his life, you heartless, soulless monster. My ferocity seemed to momentarily stun her, but her rage surged back, hotter than ever. Monster? You're the monsters. Using a sick kid for perks. Absolutely vile. Suddenly, like magic, park security appeared. 2 uniformed officers moved swiftly through the parted crowd, their expressions grim. Ma'am, the lead officer said, his voice calm but firm. You need to come with us.
Right now.
You're causing a major disturbance. Disturbance? Karen screeched, rounding on them, momentarily forgetting us. They're the disturbance. They're committing fraud. You should arrest them. She fumbled frantically for her phone, attempting to film the officers. I'm recording this. You can't do this. I know my rights. I work for Langford and Stern, a major law firm. Naming her employer in her meltdown. A fatal mistake. Ma'am, please lower your voice and come with us immediately, the officer repeated, his tone hardening, leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. Bystanders were now openly recording, dozens of phones held aloft, capturing every ugly second. Karen's face crumpled as the reality of her public humiliation hit her. She saw the cameras, heard the disgusted murmurs, "Vile woman. Leave that poor family alone, she's unhinged." As the officers began to gently but inexorably escort her away, she twisted back for one final, venomous strike. She locked eyes with Leo, who was still crying against me. "Enjoy your little act while it lasts, kid," she screamed, her voice dripping pure poison. "Nobody stays sick forever." And then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd and the firm grips of security. A heavy, stunned silence descended on our section of the parade route, broken only by Leo's heartbroken sobs and the distant, oblivious strains of the parade music. People stared at us, their faces etched with sympathy and utter shock. A woman nearby offered me a packet of tissues, her eyes full of pity. An older gentleman knelt beside Leo's chair and whispered encouragement, telling him he was a very brave young man and not to let the darkness of others put out his light. The parade's magic was irrevocably broken, shattered by the sheer force of Karen's hatred. But in its place, something else flickered, a sense of shared outrage, of communal condemnation. Those videos, they were already spreading like wildfire. Within minutes, park management arrived, Diane from guest relations looking horrified, accompanied by a Make-A-Wish representative whose face was pale with shock. Apologies poured out. They quickly moved us away from the gawking crowd to a quiet, private lounge area. They brought Leo cool water, a plush toy of his favorite character, and assured us Karen had been removed from the park property and issued a lifetime ban. Diane confirmed they had already contacted the local police department. Karen's targeted harassment, especially towards a vulnerable child, combined with her earlier threats and her escalating aggression, warranted official intervention. Apparently, her tirade had continued even with security, insisting on her rights and demanding her fictional lawyer. The fallout over the next 24 hours was swift and brutal. Multiple bystander videos hit TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. Hashtags like #PsychoKaren, #MakeAWishMonster, #WorstKarenEver exploded. The footage was raw, undeniable, and utterly damning. Karen's contorted face, her cruel finger pointing at Leo, her vile words hanging in the air, her desperate screeching as security led her away. The internet hive mind mobilized. It took mere hours for her to be identified, name, city, and, crucially, her place of employment. Langford and Stern, the very law firm she tried to use as a weapon. The firm was besieged. Phones rang off the hook. Their email servers crashed. Their social media became a raging inferno of public disgust. Faced with irrefutable video evidence of their partner screaming abuse at a terminally ill child during his Wish trip, the firm acted decisively. They issued a strongly worded public statement condemning Ms. Henderson's appalling and indefensible behavior, confirming her immediate termination, and expressing deep sympathy for our family and the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Then came the final blow: confirmation from the police. Karen Henderson had been officially charged with harassment, disorderly conduct, and intentional infliction of emotional distress upon a minor. She was arrested, booked, and released pending a court date. The Karen who had tried to destroy my son's precious dream hadn't just lost her temper, she'd lost her job, her reputation, and her freedom from legal consequences. The payoff wasn't just justice. It was a public spectacle of her own making, a direct result of the poison she chose to spew. The days following the incident were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The theme park management and Make-A-Wish were extraordinary, showering Leo with kindness, arranging private experiences away from any potential stress, essentially trying to wrap us in a bubble of care to counteract the trauma. Their genuine remorse and support were incredibly healing. Leo, my resilient little warrior, slowly began to process what happened. The fear lingered, but the overwhelming love and reassurance helped. We focused entirely on him, on gentle distractions, on reinforcing how brave he was, and how the mean lady was wrong and had faced consequences for her bad behavior. A special, private visit with his favorite superhero character, arranged just for him, brought back that pure, unadulterated smile. Seeing it felt like winning a battle. Watching the news reports confirming Karen's termination and arrest felt validating. It wasn't about personal vengeance. It was about accountability on a grand scale. Her actions were so far beyond acceptable human behavior, so profoundly cruel, that seeing tangible consequences felt necessary, like the world tilting back towards some semblance of moral order. The public shaming, the loss of her prestigious job, the looming court date, it was a direct harvest of the hatred she had sown. Poetic justice, served cold and amplified by the court of public opinion she inadvertently summoned with her own phone recording attempt. We flew home a couple of days later, exhausted but closer than ever. Leo slept against my shoulder, clutching the superhero plushie, a tangible reminder of the kindness that existed alongside the cruelty. Watching his peaceful face, I felt the fierce, primal fire of maternal protection still burning steadily within me. That trip was a crucible. It exposed us to the ugliest side of human entitlement, but also illuminated the profound goodness of strangers, the horrified onlookers, the compassionate park staff, the unwavering Make-A-Wish team. It taught me that sometimes, Even when you just want peace, you have to find your voice and roar back against the darkness, not just for your child, but for the simple principle of decency in the world. Karen became infamous online, a digital ghost haunting comment sections, a meme embodying entitled monstrosity. We never heard anything about her court case outcome, nor did we seek it out. Her self-inflicted implosion was consequence enough. She tried to dim my son's precious light during his cherished wish, and instead, she ended up incinerated by the flames of her own making. Our focus returned, sharp and clear, to what truly mattered: Leo. Every shared laugh, every whispered "I love you," every quiet moment reading stories. The Make-A-Wish trip wasn't the perfect, untarnished memory I had desperately prayed for, thanks entirely to one hateful woman. But the image that endures, the one we choose to keep polished and bright in our hearts, isn't Karen's screaming face. It's Leo's. Lit up by the magic of a castle, the warmth of a character's hug, the defiant joy that even the cruelest Karen couldn't extinguish. And that victory, that precious memory, is ours forever.